Welcome. I'm your host, Terry Yoffe of Try Coaching. I help clients remove the obstacles that keep them from achieving their desired goals. By being courageous, clients are able to stop telling themselves their limiting belief stories so they can step outside their comfort zones and meet their challenges head on. You can learn more about me at trycoaching.com. And let's start a conversation.
I lived my entire childhood as a secret.
Hear how one secret affected this woman's young life and the struggles and challenges she had to overcome to become the person she is today. Let's have a listen as to what Jill Riddell has to say.
When we carry secrets, whether they are personal or hidden aspects of ourselves, they weigh us down and they really hinder our ability to embrace life. And they create barriers to our authentic connections. They create barriers to accepting ourselves, and they create barriers to our personal growth process.
Do you have a secret you never shared with anyone? How did it feel to harbor the secret so that no one ever noticed that you were hiding something? Meet Jill Riddell, a young woman who grew up actually being a secret. And with this secret came her loneliness and disconnection from the world around her. Jill's personal journey has inspired her mission to help others to overcome even the toughest challenges with resilience, grit, and having a supportive community by creating her podcast, Life Without Secrets, where she helps others to share their tucked away secrets and tucked away feelings that have been holding them back. And by doing so, rip the Band-Aid off those scars. Welcome, Jill Riddell. How are you today? And you are my last guest of the year.
Oh my goodness. I am so excited to be here with you and so honored. And I feel super special to be here.
Oh, I feel like we're both in pink. We're like the Barbie doll.
Yeah, we are. We're representing our pink. I do some branding, and my girl that's helping with branding, she's like, let's put a little more white in there. I'm like, how about more pink?
You know, that's okay. Pink is a very nice color.
It is. It's my color.
It's not usually mine, but once in a while I want to be pinky.
Yeah. You brought it on the right day.
Okay. Jill, Life Without Secrets. Tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today, because I know you've got quite an amazing story.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, it is a big story, and I'll try to not go too far because I could spend 30 minutes talking about it. But so Life Without Secrets is the name of the podcast. And some people think like, oh, it means like we're all just supposed to come on here and tell our secrets, right? And really what it came from is I lived my entire childhood as a secret. And so I was actually a product of an affair, and my dad decided to hide me from his family. And so I got to see my dad about like once every year, and he had this entire other family in another state that didn't know I existed. I knew about this family, and I would go around when I was little and I'd say, yeah, I have 7 brothers and 1 sister, because that's what I had between my mom and my dad. It was a big family. And I would like talk about them, and I'd feel like I'm just going to meet them someday. And then around about 11, I was becoming kind of an angry child. And so my mom really pulled me into therapy. And the counselor in there learns about this situation with my mom. And she's like, what do you mean this child doesn't know these people don't know she exists? And my mom's like, yeah, like, this is just how it is. And so she tells me in this counselor's office that actually like these people don't know I exist. And you would think like, okay, like everything's going to come out now and everything's going to be fine, and because I always knew there was something missing. Like, how come I'm not meeting these people? How come I'm not there on Christmas? How come I don't get to go to Disneyland? Like, how come you guys get to do this stuff and I don't? And I just felt like, for lack of better words, like the redheaded stepchild situation, and when you're little, you can't really explain yourself this way, right? Like this is all in hindsight, but I knew I felt really lonely and I felt like I didn't know where I fit in. I felt like the people I live with, like they don't share the same last name as I do because my mom did give me my dad's last name. And I just didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. And so at that age, I was thinking, oh, okay, well, now I'm going to get to meet people and stuff. And that's not what happened. Because I knew I was a secret, I was allowed to go. My dad was a truck driver and he drove all around the United States delivering special automotive vehicles. So he'd do like commercial shoots for Toyota and Chevy, and they were actually really fun. And so because I knew at this point I was a secret, by the time I was 12, I got to go with him in the truck for like a week and go on these commercial shoots. And it was really fun. But there was this point where like I wanted to earn my dad's love. I wanted to be able to spend that time with him. And so he didn't tell me to like be quiet when his wife was on the phone. I just kind of knew my place. I felt like, like I didn't want to do anything to ruin his situation. I didn't want to be the cause of somebody else's pain. And so I remember just sitting in the passenger seat of his truck and going down the highway, and I would just be afraid to even chew on my gum because I didn't want her to hear me and be like the reason that everything would fall apart. And so I carried like this loneliness with me. And, I would try to feel like I could connect on a deeper level with people. And that really ended up leaving me with some wounds as a teenager because I was people pleasing, trying to find connection. And so I would kind of look for love in all the wrong places as a teenager. And I always wanted my own, like, I wanted to feel like I was part of a family. And I ended up getting pregnant at 17. And that was like a huge, wow, like transformational moment in my life because having a baby at 17, or I just turned 18, it was probably the biggest gift of my life, the biggest challenge I've, dealt with in my life, and the thing that has really made me. All at the same time. And when I saw this baby for the first time, I remember thinking in my head, like, how could you hide this baby? And so I really had a struggle with that relationship. But I knew I had to like push through and prove that I was going to still be successful. I was still going to matter to somebody in the world, because at this point I felt like I didn't really matter to this family that didn't know I existed. And so that's where like me living as a secret and holding on to these emotions, I never was able to fully express myself. And I became an ER nurse, and I went to college. I was valedictorian in my college. I pushed through. And, I've been taught because of my situation to like hold my emotions back. And that really served me well in a sense of being an emergency room, right? Like nobody's getting helped if you're in the corner crying over the last patient, And so it kind of was like, I'm really good at this. Like I'm just going to like step up to the plate here and like, I got this, and I have always felt like very passionate about that. And like, there was a sense of meaning there for me, right? Like I could physically help save someone's life. Like that is such a gift, but at the same time, I was further pushing like emotions to the side. And so, what I really want people to understand with Life Without Secrets is it really means letting go of fear, letting go of shame, of guilt, and embracing self-acceptance and self-love and self-compassion, really diving deeper and asking yourself, like, how do I really feel? What makes me feel this way? Have I ever felt this way before? And is it related? And I think like when we really take the time to dive into our emotions, we release the barriers between each other, meaning we can have stronger, deeper, more meaningful connections. Because in my opinion, the real pandemic that we're all in is called loneliness. And I can relate. And so I really started Life Without Secrets to be an anchor for that, to let people know that you are never alone in what you're going through and that connection is key.
As children, we have enough on our plate, right? Trying to grow up, not knowing. But when we are saddled with these emotions, and for you and many others, I think, in my personal opinion, trying to please your father, hoping at least a door would open so he would say, come on in, meet the family, meet your siblings. So I think you're caught between a rock and a hard place. Other than therapy, and being an ER nurse and having a child, what else? What were the other elements that you could share that helped you through? This is a big, big unpacking here.
Yes, it really is. So I'll say this. I think that everybody can relate to having struggles in their life. We can think that we can plan our entire life and we're going to get married at this age, we're going to have children, or we're going to be successful in this career. And this in 5 years, this is what it's going to look like. And, which is all great to plan those things. But at the end of the day, the only thing that's guaranteed is that in the next 365 days, you are going to struggle at something in your life. And so I think the biggest thing is figuring out who you really are and how you can approach and have the resilience to overcome or meet that struggle and get through on the other side and really grow from it instead of let it hold you back. And so, you asked me what besides therapy, what did that look like? And I'll tell you, because I pushed my emotions to the side so much, I met my husband and I continued to do that. And what ended up happening was I was living my life through a lens of I don't matter. And so anything my husband did, I would just see oh, I don't matter to him, and so I think what the biggest thing for me was becoming really self-aware. And just as a tool for people, if you struggle with you were never taught to talk about your emotions, I was never either. And when I first started, even in therapy, they'd be oh, watch this movie and cry because I was so even keel all the time. I didn't have a big emotion this way or that way, which means I didn't experience a total joyful situation. And I didn't experience the detriment. I was very just in the middle all the time and never allowing myself to experience those big emotions. And it was a protection for me, And so what I would advise is get out a piece of paper that you can go on Google and you can find a list of 100 emotions, and print it out. And as you're going through your day, look at those emotions and figure out where you're at and write them down. And, because there's all different kinds of emotions. And I like to put them in a grid where if you just draw a plus sign, okay. And I do them based on my heart rate and what it does to my heart rate and what it does to my nervous system when I chart these out, because that's how we know whether we are using a lot of energy or we get to save our energy so that we can meet that struggle and overcome it and get through, right? In a healthy way. So I make a little plus sign. In the top right corner is your positive emotions that increase your heart rate, right? Courage, confidence, excitement. Okay. On the left top side of that grid of the plus sign, you're going to write things that are negative emotions that also increase your heart rate, right? This is a lot of fear, nervous, frustration, anger, big emotions, right? On the bottom left side of that plus sign, you're going to write any negative emotions that decrease your heart rate. So these are sad, depressed, ambivalent, anything that is decreasing your heart rate and a negative for you. And then finally, the bottom right hand corner is going to be emotions that decrease your heart rate, but are happy emotions. They're positive emotions like joy, peace, calm, And as you're going throughout your day and you have your 100 emotions, I want you to when you pick out those emotions that you're feeling, I want you to chart them on this grid. And this is a way to figure out on an everyday basis. And I would love for you to do this for a week, for a month, because this is how we start figuring out where we are, what identify those emotions that you're having. And if you could just write a dot and write down the emotion on this grid that you're feeling as you go through the month or the week. And it really gives you a sense of where are you right now? And in order to get better, in order to be able to handle those struggles in our lives, we have to figure out where we are first. And so if we figure out where we are, then we can actually do something about it, right? And we can re-energize our batteries, because if we are living on the left side of this plus sign with negative emotions, the majority of the time, then our battery is going to run really low, right? So we are going to feel exhausted all the time. We are going to feel like we don't matter. We are going to feel like we're not good enough. We're going to feel overwhelmed. We're going to feel stressed. And stress is the cause of so much of our health issues, right? And we want to be over to the right side of the grid. And so when you do have those emotions on the right side of the grid, I want you to think about what was it that gave you that emotion? What was it that gave you that positive emotion? What were you doing when you were experiencing that? Write it down, because these are things that you're going to want to bring upon yourself when you're in that struggle so that you can re-energize in the process. And so for me, the biggest thing was figuring out where I was and then being able to figure out what I needed in that moment.
And that's fabulous. I hope people take that away and are able to work with that. Growing up, I was a very depressed child. I didn't grow up in a great environment. I was stuttering, no confidence. And it took a long time for me to find a therapist. And I had no clue until we started chipping away, at the walls we put up. And it took me years on a therapist's couch to start to see, and then putting myself in situations where I started to feel good, where I started to make a difference. And that is, in alignment with doing what you said. Not only that, but then starting to build confidence by being in situations that don't tear you down, where you are doing a good job and testing the waters. If you put yourself in situations that are part of that self-fulfilling prophecy of being worthless or not good enough, that's what's going to keep coming up. It took a long time and a long path for me to find out who I was. I never knew. My mother was a narcissist, so it was a people pleaser for a long time. So we all grow up with struggles, how we go about creating the change that brings us to this point, you and me. And what made you become an ER trauma nurse?
I like that question. So, what's so funny is that so my first year of college, I had my child, and that first year I got my EMT. So I was an emergency medical technician. I would work on the ambulance, and then I worked in the hospital in the emergency room. And that I totally fell in love with. I loved it. I felt needed. I felt wanted. I felt useful. For the first time in my life, I was like, I have a purpose, these people need me. I can literally help save their life. So cool, right? It's the best gift ever. But, having a baby young, I thought in nursing school, I was like, well, maybe I want to be a labor and delivery nurse, because then I can see these young people that come in here, these young girls, and I can help mentor them and say, look at me. I accomplished this goal, and whatever goal you have, this is not the end of your story. You are worthy, and you are going to become whatever you want to be. And then I realized, having a baby myself and then working in labor and delivery in nursing school, that was not the place that anybody wants to hear anything coming out of anybody's mouth, because that is a very painful and special situation. So that was not the place that I was going to be helping these girls that I wanted to help. And so it was also very repetitive, and I am a little bit of an adrenaline junkie. I like not knowing what's coming through the door. I love, like, it gives me courage and confidence, like, to just be able to on the fly, like, let's do this. I definitely chose it, for one, because I felt like I had a purpose there. And for two, I felt needed, and that I could really help people. And I love this question too, because one of the things that, like, the reason why I started my podcast was because being in it for so long, I've been in emergency medicine. Let's see, how old am I? Almost 17 years now. So I started as an EMT when I was 18 years old. Okay. And so I've been doing this a long time. And as much as I felt like I served a purpose for people that were close to dying at times, right? Which those are my favorite situations. Like, I want to be able to help that situation. However, I would say most of the people we see in the emergency room, that's not the case. A lot of it is like, there is a external problem that is showing up to us in the emergency room that we can put a Band-Aid over, right? And we can send them home and they feel better temporarily. But really what I find is that a lot of the work that needs to be done is the internal work to fix the external problem. And so that was the reason why I really started the podcast, was to fill the gap between what I could provide in the emergency room, like the Band-Aid, to, like, I want to rip off the Band-Aid and I want to see what's underneath there, because we need to heal from the inside out. And in emergency medicine, it's really good for, like, life-saving treatment. It's not good for, like, chronic health issues and things. Like, it's just not, like, it's just to put that Band-Aid on so that you can go home and do the actual work that it takes, and that's not everybody's situation, but I'll tell you, it's a lot of what I see. And so I started it so that I could feel, like I can make a difference here too. And let's do the internal work.
So when did you start Life Without Secrets?
It's been a little over a year that it's been live. I had been working on it about 6 months prior to it launching. So, like, probably a year and 8 months that I started working on it. But yeah, it's been a ride. I love it.
Tell us a little bit about Life Without Secrets. Obviously, it was born from your own secret. So when you have a conversation with somebody, do they reveal their secrets? You're looking for connection and humanness and all of that. Tell us a little bit about Life Without Secrets and how it unfolds.
Yeah, I'd love to. Okay, so I usually, if you're a guest on the podcast, it's usually someone that is speaking from a scar and not an open wound. And what I mean by that is that they're somebody that has been through something and done the work so that they can give other people their tools that they use to get through that particular situation. And like I said, we're never alone in what we're going through. And I truly believe that. And so there is different kinds of stories on there of different people's journeys. And, like, it's really to bring hope and connection, because, a lot of times what we see is, like, we go on social media and, like, we're all guilty of it. It's the highlight reel. And the truth is like, life isn't always rainbows, butterflies, positive vibes only, right? Like, real life is tough. And, and your struggle doesn't define you. In fact, like, it can be the thing that grows you the most in your whole life. And so it's honoring the struggle, from the scar, and showing, like, hey, whatever you're going through, like, I believe in you and you will get through this. Like, we're here with you.
So, this podcast is about creating change and talking to these people and uncovering with them some of their inner issues. It lightens them, I would imagine, and they can. I know for me, I didn't really have anybody. I mean, I innately, how I do not know, found my own path. I was intuitive enough, when I lived in the city, I found a therapist that really made an impact and on how I grew. But that wasn't enough. How was I going to support myself? Finding work, never knowing, and finally getting on track later on in life. And I think those first X years were all about my learning. I always put myself in places where there were challenges, where I could grow and learn. And I'm older, but I'm still doing that today.
Yeah, it's a life process. It's not something that we do once, right? And it's so important to say exactly that is, this is something that you do throughout your life, and we get better at it, I think. And I think the big thing about doing that internal work is when you do the internal work, you feel more connected to yourself. And therefore, when you're connected to yourself, the connections with other people form like so naturally and authentically, and you no longer feel lonely. And so, being that I was a teen mom, like I really struggled to feel like what I fit in with my family. Then I struggled to fit in like, who do I hang out with? Because like the people my age they don't have kids. They don't know what I'm going through. They can't understand me, on a certain level. And then the moms that are, like my friend or my child's friends' moms, for instance, it's like, they're looking at me like, how old are you? And so it really just put me in this like position where it was like, where do I fit in? Where do I belong? And, it's like, there is always a place for us. And when we do the internal work, like it will shine so bright to you. Like I say that from experience. I did this work not so long ago. Like I started this work on myself years into this. Like this was only like 3 years ago that I did all this work on myself. Like my husband and I were ready to split apart because we both carried what I call our grief cases around. And it got to a point where we just kept loading the grief cases and never unpacking them and deciding what drawer they were going to go into. And when that drawer opened, what we were going to do with it. We never had those conversations. We just kept pushing through until one day that grief case, what I like to call it, just explodes. And like, then, it's either you decide to walk away from the disaster zone or you get into it and you do the work. And we did the work. And I will just tell you, like, there's so much freedom on the other side. Like starting this podcast, like in my life right now, I feel like I have these deep, beautiful connections with people. And I've never had that in my life. Like I say this because I want people to understand this. And I feel like when we carry secrets, whether they are personal or hidden aspects of ourselves, they weigh us down and they really hinder our ability to embrace life. And they create barriers to our authentic connections. They create barriers to accepting ourselves, and they create barriers to our personal growth process. And so by choosing to live a life without secrets, we create this space for vulnerability, for self-expression, and the opportunity to allow our hearts to really reignite with passion and purpose and joy and build those meaningful, life-changing connections that we all really deeply want in our lives. Like we crave these connections. It's why like social media is great, but these are superficial connections. If you're not taking those connections and diving deeper into them, you're going to feel lonely on the other side of the screen. Like it's just the way life is. We're not meant to do life alone. We're not meant to sit behind a screen. We're meant to get in person with people and feel their energy and connect with them. It's so important. And so I feel really passionate about that. And so I love teaching people like how to do that work. And I'm going to be launching a course in these next few months. And so if you're following me or on my website, like you'll see information about it. I'm doing the course as I'm teaching you the process. And one of the things is what I mentioned on here when we document where we're at, what feelings we have. And I'm going to walk you through the process of connecting to yourself and connecting with other people. And it will change your life. Like we have to have these moments. I think there's a difference between being alone and being lonely, right? Like being alone is good for us. Like we need those moments where like the noise of the world is not coming at us, because nowadays it's so hard to get away from your emails, your text messages, your social media. It's information overload. And so we don't even know how we feel because everybody else wants to tell us how to feel. And so we got to get really real. We got to be still, get alone, get quiet. Really sit and have those moments in our day where we just sit and think about that and document it and figure out where we're at and what we need to do to get to the other side. And so I love walking people through that process because it's beautiful and it's what has really just reignited my heart and gave me this passion to do Life Without Secrets and help people. I want people to feel that, being someone that didn't have that before and didn't have those deep connections and didn't know where I belonged, and didn't feel understood. I know what that's like. And I want people to experience that from a deeper level.
I grew up very lonely because I was a sensitive child, but you don't know how to deal with it when people don't accept your sensitivity and they kind of turn their backs on you, and so much hurt. And yet my secret, I grew up where looking beautiful and wearing beautiful clothes was the standard. That was the look of our family. And I went along, and when I got into the fashion world, which is where I started, I looked beautiful. But inside of me, I was very lonely because I never felt I belonged anywhere. I mean, even though I thought I was making connections, it's hard when you're harboring these thoughts. Exactly. And it took years to kind of drop the mask, drop the veil, and to grow. And my passion has always been about creating change, small ways. And that's how I wanted to start the podcast, to talk to people that were my tribe, people that felt the same way I did. Not, everyone's got a different story, but the struggles and the challenges and how they made an impact and a difference by coming out of it and what it took to get there. And you're absolutely accurate in most people don't have authentic connections. It's hard when you're harboring and you don't know how people are going to think about you. So to open up is so vulnerable. I did that as a child and realized I got hurt. So I kind of closed up. But as an adult, you can handle it differently. And, it doesn't have to, thank you for clarifying. It doesn't have to be a secret. It can be what you're harboring, what you're hiding, that you're not willing to show the world.
I mean, it could be so simple too. Like I think about it in a relationship, right? Like this is a struggle that my husband and I faced for years, which almost led to our demise, was like, we're not actually saying the truth of how we feel. Okay. Like how many relationships that's true for? Like where we just don't say anything. We don't want to create problems. And so I'm not going to tell him that, to be honest, that really made me feel, misunderstood, or like I didn't matter. And to be honest, like this is coming up from my childhood and it's really sensitive for me because I felt that way with my dad growing up. And so I would really just like it. And being able to say what you need out of it is really key too. Like my husband, I'll say, I'm really feeling this way and what I really need from you, because this is key, because we can't just like throw things out there and not know what we need for it, because they're never going to be able to give us something if they don't know what it is. Like I need you to just sit on the couch and just listen to what I have to say. And he's like, oh, that's all I got to do. Okay. Like, let me just sit on this couch. Tell me about your day. And I'm like, thank you. Like, I want to walk myself through it. I need to, like I say, I need to reveal to heal. And so I gotta let this out, and then we can heal it and work on it, But like and this is what I did. And so what happens when we do that in a relationship is we feel really resentful, right? We get bitter, we get resentful when we just keep packing stuff in and not letting it out. Like eventually it's gonna be a disaster zone.
Such brilliant words, honestly. So much to take in.
Yeah. And you know what I will say too, Terry, I really want people to understand and really hear me on this. Sorry, my dog is growling at me. He's like, let me out. But what I really want people to hear is that my dad and I actually have a great relationship now. And people are like, what? And the reason why too is because I did the work on myself to know that like him keeping me a secret had nothing to do with me. It had everything to do with the shame and the guilt that he carried. And so it just goes back to the point, right? Of like when we reveal that shame and the guilt and we heal it and we give ourselves the compassion that we need in those moments, like think of the things that could have changed, and I'm okay with what has happened because it made me who I am today.
And back then you did not have the qualifications and the wherewithal. You were young, right? Sure, now you're an adult and, understanding it. I feel the same way. I didn't grow up in a great environment, and I don't know, there was something in the family that I couldn't put my finger on. I have my own thoughts. I kind of grew up moving around like that, so unsure, so unsteady. And that takes its toll on kids because they don't know. And kids always believe, I must have done something.
Right. And the real question we should ask is like, well, what shaped your mom or what shaped your dad?
Exactly.
And have compassion. I'm not saying that we have to tolerate things, like obviously set boundaries, right? And you have to know where those are, because if they're not doing the internal work, you're not responsible for them to do that work. They're responsible to do that work. You can't do that work for them, right? But like you can have compassion to understand that didn't have to do with you. That had everything to do with the work they haven't done. And we wish they would, right?
But back then, when my parents were older, they didn't know any better. They were confused people that didn't have a happy life, very confused. And, obviously somewhere along the line, you do have to forgive them. People can only do what they know. They can't do what they don't know. So here we are, life without secrets, a course you're giving on helping people. This has been amazing. The tidbits, the words that you have given us, authenticity, making a chart, seeing what your feelings are, having to unpack it, not be upset or anxious about doing it, but just doing the work, and the rewards are there. Jill, this has been amazing. Of course, I could be on this call for another hour with you. Have a wonderful holiday. Thank you so much. I'm just thrilled that we had a chance to end the year with you and your brilliance.
Thank you so much. This was so fun to have this conversation with you. Keep doing what you're doing. Like, I love this. I agree. We all need to create change in our communities. And it could be like making someone smile at the grocery store, right? Like, it doesn't have to be something big, like just where you are, like be the light in the world.
And you don't have to be rich or famous to create something.
Exactly. Totally agree.
Jill Riddell, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. Thank you. If you enjoyed this podcast, please leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Do you harbor secrets or feelings that get in the way of connection and belonging? If so, it might be time to shine a light on them and allow those secrets to come out so you can finally create the life you truly desire. I'm hoping that this compelling and extraordinary conversation with Jill Riddell has offered you thoughts on how you can create your own changes by making choices that matter to you. Thank you for joining the conversation. For related content on extraordinary work, please visit my website, trycoaching.com. Always remember, when you work with passion and purpose, your work can become extraordinary. Endings, the rearview mirror, and beginnings. Let's look at how 2023 ended, what you might want to leave behind as we cross the bridge into 2024. How looking in the rearview mirror can give you a glimpse into the past year, what you want to leave in the rearview mirror, what lessons you learned that you might want to carry into the new year, and what new beginnings you want to create and expand upon for your growth and success. I'm Terry Yoffe. Please join me for this new year conversation.